In the waters between China and Taiwan, the world may be approaching its most dangerous geopolitical flashpoint in decades. A small island with 23 million people now sits at the center of a global power struggle involving nuclear superpowers, advanced technology, and competing visions of the future. Chinese President Xi Jinping has declared that Taiwan's reunification with China is not optional, but inevitable. Taiwan disagrees. The United States watches closely, and the world fears what could happen next. Hello and welcome. I am Kevin Taylor, and you have started watching the Truth Global. Fighter jets now cross the Taiwan Strait almost daily. Chinese warships surround the island in massive military drills. American naval forces patrol nearby waters. Every speech, every military exercise, every political election increases the tension. But this conflict is not just about territory. It is about history, identity, democracy, nationalism, and control over the technology that powers the modern world. Because if Taiwan falls into conflict, the consequences could spread far beyond Asia, disrupting global trade, destroying economies, and potentially pulling major powers into war. So how did we get here? Why does Xi Jinping believe Taiwan must return to China? Why do so many Taiwanese reject Beijing's demands? And could this standoff become the defining crisis of the 21st century? To understand the Taiwan crisis, we need to go back more than 70 years, to the Chinese Civil War. In the 1940s, China was divided between two rival forces. On one side stood the Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong. On the other side was the nationalist government, known as the Kuomintang, led by Chiang Kai-shek. After years of brutal fighting, Mao's communist forces emerged victorious in 1949 and established the People's Republic of China in Beijing. But the defeated nationalists did not disappear. They fled across the Taiwan Strait to the island of Taiwan, bringing soldiers, officials, and supporters with them. From that moment on, two governments began claiming to represent China. Beijing insisted Taiwan was part of its territory. Taiwan operated separately under its own government. Over time, the two sides evolved in completely different directions. Mainland China became a one-party communist state. Taiwan eventually transformed into a vibrant democracy with free elections, independent media, and strong civil liberties. Generations passed, identities changed, and many people in Taiwan began seeing themselves not as Chinese citizens waiting for reunification, but as Taiwanese. Yet Beijing never abandoned its claim. For the Chinese Communist Party, Taiwan remained unfinished business from the Civil War, a wound in history that still had to be healed. For Xi Jinping, Taiwan is not merely a political dispute. It is deeply tied to nationalism, legitimacy, and what he calls the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Since taking power in 2012, Xi has positioned himself as the leader who will restore China to historical greatness after what Beijing describes as a century of humiliation by foreign powers. In this vision, reunifying Taiwan with mainland China carries enormous symbolic importance. Xi has repeatedly stated that the Taiwan issue cannot be passed down indefinitely from generation to generation. In speech after speech, Chinese leaders insist reunification is inevitable. And increasingly, Xi has connected this goal directly to his political legacy. For Beijing, Taiwan represents sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national pride. But there is also a strategic dimension. Taiwan sits at the center of a chain of islands stretching across the Pacific, a region crucial to military and naval power. Control over Taiwan could dramatically expand China's influence in the region, while weakening America's strategic position in Asia. And then there is technology. Taiwan is home to Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, the world's most advanced semiconductor manufacturer. These tiny computer chips power smartphones, artificial intelligence, military systems, vehicles, and modern economies. Losing access to them could send shockwaves across the globe, which means Taiwan is no longer just a local dispute. It has become one of the most important geopolitical pressure points on Earth. In recent years, the Taiwan crisis has entered a far more dangerous phase. China's military pressure on Taiwan has intensified dramatically. Chinese fighter jets now regularly enter Taiwan's air defense identification zone. Massive naval exercises simulate blockades and invasion scenarios. Warships encircle the island. Missiles are launched into nearby waters. Beijing describes these operations as warnings against separatism, but to Taiwan and much of the world, they appear to be rehearsals for war. China's military, known as the People's Liberation Army, has undergone one of the fastest military modernizations in modern history. Under Xi Jinping, defense spending increased rapidly. New aircraft carriers, hypersonic missiles, cyber warfare capabilities, and amphibious assault forces transformed China into a major military power. Analysts believe Beijing is preparing itself for the possibility of forcibly taking Taiwan if peaceful reunification fails. Yet, invading Taiwan would be extraordinarily difficult. The Taiwan Strait acts as a natural barrier. Taiwan's mountainous terrain favors defenders, and any conflict could quickly draw in outside powers. Still, the growing military activity has changed global calculations. What was once seen as a distant political disagreement is now increasingly viewed as a genuine security crisis. And every military drill raises a terrifying question. Is China preparing for deterrence or preparing for war? While Beijing views reunification as a historic mission, many people in Taiwan see the situation very differently. Taiwan has developed its own political identity over decades of separation from mainland China. It holds democratic elections. Citizens openly criticize leaders. Independent media operates freely. Civil liberties that are tightly restricted in mainland China are protected in Taiwan. And for many Taiwanese citizens, these freedoms are non-negotiable. Polls increasingly show that a large portion of Taiwan's population identifies primarily as Taiwanese rather than Chinese. Younger generations especially grew up in a democratic society with little emotional connection to Beijing's political system. This creates a direct clash of identity. Beijing believes Taiwan is part of one Chinese nation. Many Taiwanese believe they already govern themselves independently. Events in Hong Kong also changed public opinion. After China imposed a sweeping national security law on Hong Kong, trust in Beijing sharply declined inside Taiwan. Many feared that promises of autonomy could eventually disappear under Chinese control. As a result, support for formal reunification remains extremely low in Taiwan. Yet Taiwan also faces a dangerous balancing act. Declaring formal independence could provoke military action from Beijing. So Taiwan continues navigating a fragile middle ground, acting as a self-governing democracy while avoiding actions that could trigger open conflict. The Taiwan crisis is no longer just about China and Taiwan. It has become a central issue in the rivalry between China and the United States. For decades, Washington followed a policy known as strategic ambiguity. The United States officially recognizes Beijing as the government of China, but also maintains close unofficial ties with Taiwan. America sells weapons to Taiwan and supports the island's ability to defend itself. However, Washington intentionally avoids clearly stating whether U.S. forces would directly intervene in a war. This ambiguity is designed to discourage both sides, discouraging China from invading, while also discouraging Taiwan from formally declaring independence. But tensions are growing. American officials increasingly warn that China may attempt to alter the status quo by force. At the same time, Beijing accuses Washington of interfering in Chinese internal affairs. And the stakes are enormous. Taiwan's semiconductor industry is deeply embedded in the global economy. A conflict could cripple supply chains, crash markets, disrupt technology production, and trigger a worldwide economic shock. Beyond economics lies an even darker possibility: a military confrontation between nuclear-armed powers. which is why leaders around the world are watching every development in the Taiwan Strait with growing concern. Because the decisions made here may shape the future balance of power for decades to come. Taiwan today stands at the intersection of history and the future. For Xi Jinping, reunification represents national destiny and political legacy. For Taiwan, the struggle is about identity, democracy, and self-determination. And for the world, this small island has become one of the most dangerous geopolitical flashpoints of the modern era. No one knows exactly what will happen next. Perhaps tensions will stabilize. Perhaps diplomacy will prevail. Or perhaps the Taiwan Strait will become the center of a conflict unlike anything the world has seen in generations. But one thing is certain, the future of Taiwan will not only shape Asia, it may shape the future of the entire world. And as military power, nationalism, technology, and global politics collide, the world watches, waiting to see what happens next.